Let's start then.
Well, I would like to welcome everybody to the latest webinar in our monthly series that focuses on helping Kansas companies export to more countries and export more successfully. We're constantly updating our calendar of events as we work to provide the most timely and useful information available. Right now, we're working to develop a program on how to make best use of virtual marketing tools in business-to-business sales and hope to have it ready to go shortly. Today, however, we are focusing on our trade promotion partners. Now, whether you're new to exporting or a seasoned veteran accustomed to selling into countries around the world, it pays to know the best ways to make the sale. This can include knowing many things about your potential markets, such as how to find good local partners, the best ways to get paid, as well as something as fundamental as which markets offer the best opportunities for sales. In fact, as many on this webinar today know, there are a whole host of things one needs to consider to be a successful exporter. Of course, this last year has only made the challenge more complicated as many countries close their borders to foreigners, retrench economically, or even change the rules of the game. So now more than ever, it's essential to gain a greater and more up-to-the-minute understanding of the international marketplace to achieve readiness, to be a prepared exporter. Today, we are joined on this webinar by 4 organizations that each have particular kinds of expertise and ways they can help all exporters become prepared to spot opportunities quickly and seize them successfully. Together, we work hand in hand and all offer services to Kansas exporters that address the range of needs they may have and which work together and, importantly, complement each other in very productive ways. Now, to have the best production experience in today's webinar, we ask that you mute your microphone and turn off your video. After the speakers have finished, we've asked them to be prepared to answer any questions the audience may have. To ask a question, simply pose it at any time in the chat box. So that people can access this information later, our session is also being recorded. Shortly after today's event, we will post the recording on YouTube and send all attendees a link. With that, I would like to turn the program over to my colleague and friend, Mr. Chang Liu, who will introduce each speaker and manage the rest of the program. Liu, please take it away.
Jeff, thank you for the introduction. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone taking time out of your busy schedule to join me today. Now, speaking from personal experience, it is really weird to have meetings just with yourself. So thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Chen Liu. Liu is my last name, spelled L-U, just 2 letters, and I go by my last name. I joined the Kansas Department of Commerce in 2013. My focus includes export assistance and business recruitment. Today, we're focusing on the export piece. Now, let me start by asking you a question. How would you like to make $368 per second? Now, some of you probably wondering if that's even possible. Remember, 95% of the consumers live outside of the United States. In fact, Kansas companies exported $11.6 billion worth of goods in 2019, and that translates to $368 per second. Trust me, I would like to think I'm very good at math. So it is possible. We hope today's session will set you up as a prepared exporter aiming at the $368 per second mark. To all of our participants, during this 1-hour journey we're about to embark, we will have the opportunity to hear from representatives of the U.S. Commercial Service, Kansas Global Trade Services, World Trade Center, Kansas City, and the Kansas Small Business Development Center. Among others, they are the export service providers we work with hand in hand regularly. Many of them offer excellent export assistance programs, and we may have financial assistance available to help you pay for these services. Okay, now before I start, let's just take care of a couple of housekeeping items. Number 1, like Jeff mentioned, please keep your microphone and camera off until you need to speak. Number 2, the chat feature is on, so if you have questions, please feel free to submit, and we will be sure to address those during the Q&A session. We want to hear from you, We want to know how we can help you, so please submit your questions. Now, if any technical difficulty happens on my end, which happens all the time, my colleague Jeff will take it over and ensure the meeting continues. All right, now first up, Ms. Pinky Thacker from the U.S. Commercial Service Kansas City office, and Mr. AJ Anderson from the Wichita office. They are my counterpart at the federal level. Without further ado, Pinky, the floor is yours.
Lou, thank you so much. That was a funny introduction there. So I just wanted to say good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I hope everyone is continuing to stay safe and healthy. And thank you to Lou and the Department of Commerce for having us. We're really excited to be presenting today along some of our local partners to really bring you the full suite of the resources that are available to Kansas businesses that have an eye towards exporting. And so before we get started, I'd just like to take a quick minute to introduce ourselves. My name is Pinky Thacker, and I'm an international trade specialist with the U.S. Commercial Service located in the Kansas City office. And I'm joined today by my colleague, AJ Anderson, Director of the Commercial Service Wichita office. So without further ado, I think we can go ahead and jump right in. And we'd like to start by showing you a brief video that shows a little bit about who we are and what we do. Lou, could we have the video, please?
Many U.S. companies of all sizes grow their business by exporting products and services to buyers around the world. If you want to start or expand your international sales to one market or 100, we'd like to help. We are the U.S. Commercial Service, part of the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration. We are the export experts, with a global network of trade professionals located in more than 100 U.S. cities and in U.S. embassies and consulates in almost 80 countries. This is unparalleled global reach that can help any exporting business. The key focus of the U.S. Commercial Service is to help small and medium-sized businesses, the foundation of the U.S. economy, increase exports and expand into new markets abroad. When U.S. companies succeed abroad, everybody wins. Exporting supports more good-paying jobs in America and U.S. economic prosperity. 95% of the world's consumers live outside the United States. We advise U.S. businesses on what these consumers need and how to market them, online, on the ground, and around the world. We provide valuable and easy-to-access tips, tools, resources, and market intelligence. We offer personalized, one-on-one export counseling and other services tailored to unique business needs, leveraged by a global network unsurpassed anywhere else. We help businesses select the best markets and sales channels, understand the rules and regulations, find qualified partners, connect with buyers around the world, and recommend ways to finance exports. We also advocate on behalf of U.S. companies bidding on foreign public sector contracts so they can compete on a level playing field. Our U.S.-based experts help develop export plans and strategies to get you started. Our international experts provide the market intelligence and connections to help businesses get that first sale in that first export market, or numerous sales in multiple markets. And every day, our in-country staff advocates on their behalf for easier market entry, lower tariffs, and even help on stick products delayed in customs. Our staff is dedicated to working with businesses every step of the way to see them grow globally and succeed in the international marketplace. Whether new to exporting or experienced global professionals looking for more market share, they can contact the export pros at the U.S. Commercial Service. Visit export.gov to learn more. Brought to you by the U.S. Commercial Service, part of the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration.
Thanks Thanks, Lou. And actually, so as I'm watching that video, I'm realizing it's a bit outdated, and I'd just like to highlight that we're actually now located at www.trade.gov and not export.gov. But I hope it gave everyone a little bit of insight into what we do. So if we could actually please move over to the presentation at this point. And as we're bringing that up, just to bring it all together, to highlight, so we are part of the federal government, and we're an agency within the U.S. Department of Commerce and the International Trade Administration. And we're federally mandated to support U.S. businesses in your exporting efforts. And with the goal is to ultimately increase jobs right here at home and to reduce the trade deficit. And so while we don't have updated numbers for 2020 yet, pre-pandemic, ITA facilitated more than 90 billion in U.S. exports and inward investment for more than 35,000 clients. So the majority of which were small and medium-sized companies. And so most small and medium-sized businesses often don't have the time or resources to dedicate towards strategically exporting. So think of us as your taxpayer-funded international sales team. So how do we work? We work across a wide variety of services, including everything from complimentary export counseling to paid services that include market intelligence, business matchmaking, trade events, and commercial diplomacy. And AJ and I would like to touch on a few of these services. Next slide, please, Lou. So looking at market intelligence, the U.S. Commercial Service develops market intelligence across a variety of industry sectors, which includes country commercial guides and industry-specific resource guides that are published on our website. And then we can also do customized market research at a client's request. We also have the initial market check, which is an initial assessment of the market potential of your product or service that gathers feedback on it from industry participants in a specified target market. And then we can also conduct an international company profile, which is a report on the foreign partner that includes everything from their management details, financial condition, creditworthiness, and their experience conducting or promoting programs in order to help you determine whether an overseas partner or company would be a suitable partner for you. Next slide, please, Lou. Business matchmaking. So first up, we have the International Partner Search, and this is a personalized overseas search for interested and qualified partners in specific countries on behalf of a US organization. So our commercial specialist overseas would prepare a report of up to 5 potential prospects that have expressed interest in your product and service, and they can also help set up those virtual introductions for you. We also help to arrange single company promotions at the US embassies, consulates, and offsite locations abroad. So an SCP is a reception where our overseas staff would invite target industry contacts on US embassy letterhead to join and learn about your organization. The U.S. Commercial Service would help with the logistics of the event, and they would invite attendees and foreign media. So this is especially recommended for program launches or networking receptions with potential partners. And then we also have a new RAISE program that is exclusively designed to assist our rural exporters. So those that are located in areas with a population of less than 150,000 or 60 miles outside of a metropolitan area. So RAISE provides primarily customized market intelligence to assess, compare, and determine the best prospect markets for our rural clients. And finally, we have the Gold Key service, which is our premier service that offers pre-screened appointments to meet with prospective recruitment partners, government and industry officials, and US embassy officials on the ground. So this one is not available virtually and is currently on pause. And then if we could move to the next slide, please, Lou, and I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, AJ, to talk about some of our other services.
Thank you, Pinky. Some of our trade events, first up is our certified trade missions. These are on pause right now because of A, COVID, and B, we just have a brand new administration as well. Hopefully we'll start seeing more of these in the fall. Certified trade missions are typically led by high-level U.S. government political appointees out of Washington. Sometimes they target an industry or a group of countries. They will go ahead and lead a group of companies, and you'll have meetings with government officials overseas, industry prospects, get briefings, things like that. International trade fairs. This is when a foreign trade show will go ahead and apply to the U.S. Commerce Department for trade fair certification. Once that's granted, our overseas offices will typically go ahead and organize a U.S. pavilion at a premier trade show overseas. They'll take out space and then go ahead and resell that in smaller blocks to U.S. companies. So that if you do participate in a U.S. pavilion at a foreign trade show, you'll be with other U.S. companies and you'll have our local staff on the ground in country helping you out. Discover global markets. We do these in the U.S. 1 to 2 times a year. These are events that are about 2 to 2.5 days. We bring in our staff from overseas. They come into a central location in the U.S. These are targeted either at regions, but more often industry sectors such as, construction equipment or healthcare, oil and gas, aerospace, things like that. And our specialists that cover those industries will come in. You can go ahead and make many appointments with them and go ahead and visit with them one-on-one about your products, services, and getting them into those markets where our people have come in from. Next slide, please. Commercial diplomacy, our advocacy center. If you are a company that sells products or services to a foreign government and you're having issues with that, we can go ahead and potentially provide advocacy for you. What that means is, for example, if you're selling to the government of Australia and you have a competitor out of, say, Indonesia, what we can do is go ahead and advocate to the Australian government to purchase your product or service versus that of, say, your Indonesian competitor. Now, let's say it's down between you and your Indonesian competitor and maybe another US provider out of California. At that point, we cannot advocate for just yourself, but we can advocate that the Australian government select a US-made product versus that of the Indonesian one. So that's advocacy. Trade barriers. An example of a trade barrier, had a small Kansas company that produced mineral supplements that go into flour production. A foreign government was buying those minerals and suddenly they started losing contracts. They found out that a German competitor providing the very same product was undercutting them. And the reason why is because the Kansas company was correctly sending their product through customs and they were being assessed duties, taxes, things like that. The German company was trying to send it through as a pharmaceutical, and it was not a pharmaceutical, it was a supplement. They went ahead and approached us. We had our office approach the government in this country. They let them know that the German company was bringing the product in and not classifying it correctly. Customs in that country looked into it. They agreed. They fined the German company, barred them from selling into the country for a while, and the Kansas company was able to go ahead and start resuming their sales. Trade dispute. If you go ahead and ship into a foreign market and your product gets hung up in foreign customs, we can go ahead and approach customs on your behalf to try to rectify the situation, get your product released. Another example of a trade dispute, something like this, an example, had a Kansas company that went ahead and sold product, sold software, as a matter of fact, to an airline in a foreign market. That airline was owned by the government. They defaulted on the payment. They did not pay the Kansas company for that software. They approached us. We approached our offices. They approached the foreign government because that was not a company defaulting on that payment. That was the foreign government. So that was a sovereign government defaulting on payment. We approached them. 2 to 3 days later, they had a wire, went ahead and paid that Kansas company. So, things that get stuck in customs, you're not getting paid, we can try to help you out with things like that. Next slide, please. Here's our contact information, and feel free to reach out to us. And Lou, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, AJ and Pinky. That was very informative, and the video is fantastic. I think it has a very catchy tune. All right, Next up, we have Ms. Karen Page from the Kansas Global Trade Services based in Wichita. Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lou. I also appreciated the catchy music for our colleagues at FCS video. It's nice to have a video. Thank you for organizing this webinar today. I appreciate the leadership of the Kansas Department of Commerce International Division team. I think it speaks so highly of the leadership because you have these 4 service providers that really work in partnership to help Kansas exporters export more. So thanks for having us today to present to the participants, and thank you for organizing this. I really appreciate your leadership. Jim, if you could go to a slide, I just have a few slides to show you that will focus in on what Kansas Global does. If you don't know us already, we've been around since 1987. I've spent my entire career in international development for the private sector for the most part, but always working in partnership with our private sector and public sector partners. Next slide, please. I'll just cover 3 areas. We really focus on the customer or the client and their ability to increase their exports. And 3 areas is where the bulk of our work is performed. And it's almost always to compete globally. I'd like to start sort of at the top. So when we first look at opportunities around the globe and how Kansas companies can be competitive, one of the tools we look to is US free trade agreements, or FTAs. Currently, the US has 14 free trade agreements and that help us compete in 20 different countries. Participating in a free trade agreement is completely voluntary, but is a great strategy to help you compete in that local market where we have that FTA. An FTA that you're probably very familiar with is USMCA, which used to be called NAFTA. And that helps us compete in the Canadian and Mexican markets. Let me just tell you a quick story about how this using FTAs has helped companies. A client of ours, this is a few years ago, was working to set up sales actually in Latin America. They were able to use CAFTA-DR and NAFTA at the time to really position themselves as the go-to supplier in household goods. This mobility, I'm sorry, my cat, I tried to close the door, but he's trying to come in and visit us, so I apologize, a virtual environment. So it helped so sorry about that. It helped the company be able to really position itself as a competitor. Their main competitors were actually in Asia. And at the time, the Asian countries did not have the same free trade agreements or free trade agreement tools for the company. So not only did it help them increase their sales in those specific markets, but it actually helped them develop their entire strategy to really have a great footprint in Latin America. Next slide, please. Another area that we do a lot of work in is export compliance. And many companies think of export compliance as sort of a cost or this thing we have to do that, you know, complying with the regulation is not always fun. We like to stress the importance of strategic marketing. So when a company is compliant with export regulations, they are showing to their buyers and intended buyers that not only are they following the rules, but they're very well managed and organized in their outreach. If companies in certain certain industries like aerospace have contracts with domestic suppliers, there's a great chance that you can also have opportunities with international buyers, and you must have your export compliance management and processes in place. We work with a company, aerospace supplier in Wichita, actually. And we were so thrilled when they said, you know, we were going through this exercise to make sure we were ITAR ready. But now we have opportunities in Turkey, in Singapore, and in Korea because we can tell them that we are compliant with US export regulations. It's really giving us a chance to bid on more projects and be competitive. Next slide, please. The bulk of our work is actually in export expansion. We begin with a customized view of opportunities in the world, starting with data, looking at key industry drivers, product drivers, and then add in local insight. All of our work in this area is absolutely customized to the particular company and its product or array of products. We also engage global partners. We have a network of global partners that we work with and work with them to get the local insight. So that adds some weight to the data indicators that we have already discovered with the Kansas company. And then together with the global partner, with Kansas global staff and the company, we began a market entry strategy to fulfill the objectives to increase exports in that particular market. One example of this is a program that we designed that we call the Export Accelerator Program, or I'm quite literal, so not a very catchy title, but the city of Wichita sponsored 5 companies in this pilot program in 2020 to walk through a 12-month process to accelerate their exports, really following this particular 3-step process, which has many other steps dispersed in there, but really working with them hand in hand to discover their opportunities in foreign countries and accelerate their exports. So far, our companies, just those 5 companies, have reported multi-millions of dollars in opportunities that they're currently exploring and chasing. And when I say opportunities, we're not looking just at the data, but actual targeted customers as well as distributor agreements. And Jim, I'll stop there. If you want to go to the next slide, it just has my contact information. If you don't already know how to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn or at the email address or our website, kansasglobal.org. Give us a call. Thank you so much for allowing me to share with us the 3 major areas that we help Kansas exporters. Let me conclude, Lou, with just one final thing. We do not do this by ourselves. We rely on the export ecosystem, which is inclusive of all the partners that are here presenting today, and many others whom you may have worked with and may know, freight forwarders, bankers, Exim Bank, all kinds of partners that make it possible. And working side by side with the export experts in Kansas and in the nation is absolutely imperative to Kansas exporter success. Thanks, Lou.
Thank you, Karen. That was very informative. And I know my $368 per second number is very enticing. Even your cat has to come in and listen. Thank you. Next up is is Ms. Melissa Miller from the World Trade Center, Kansas City. Melissa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lou. And thanks to the Kansas Department of Commerce International team for, again, organizing and hosting this today. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone. As Lou mentioned, my name is Melissa Miller. I'm the director for World Trade Center, Kansas City. I do have a short presentation if we could pull that up. Thank you. And you can go ahead and move to the next slide. So for those of you who aren't familiar with World Trade Centers, immediately we go to World Trade Center, New York, for very obvious reasons. It is not the only World Trade Center. Most people are shocked to know that there is one in Kansas City. There are actually over 300 World Trade Centers in 90 markets around the world. We are considered the largest global trade network. The Kansas City Chamber holds the license for World Trade Center Kansas City. They've held it since 1990. 2021 marks our 31st year as a World Trade Center. Our mission is to facilitate international trade in the greater Kansas City region by connecting, educating, and providing services to the regional business community in order to achieve their international trade goals and compete successfully in the global market. Next slide, please. So who do we serve? Our primary territory is dictated by the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. We cover 14 counties in the bi-state region, almost equally split between Missouri and Kansas. Our secondary territory is a little bit larger than that, and that's dictated by the World Trade Centers that are surrounding us. So to the south is Rogers, Arkansas, to the east is St. Louis, to the west is Denver, and all the way in the snowy north is Winnipeg, Manitoba. So as you can see, there's quite a big swath that we cover. Who do we help? Small, medium, large businesses, all industry sectors. We don't niche into a specific subsector. One thing that does distinguish us, we do help with importing as well as exporting. Exporting is our main focus, but we do offer some import resources as well. And even though our license is held by the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, you do not need to be a chamber member to gain access to any of our services. You do get discounts on some of our services, but again, you do not need to be a chamber member to gain access to any of ours. Next slide, please. Thank you. So now that you know who we are, who we serve, what do? We have market industry briefings throughout the year. So we'll bring in foreign dignitaries, industry experts to give real-time information and available business opportunities in those respective market or industry areas. Trade education. We'll hold events throughout the year, mostly in partnership with the people that are presenting today. And we'll focus on a specific trade topic like finance, logistics, marketing, trade agreements. We recently had one on Incoterms 2020 because it was the 10-year update for those. And it's just to educate the regional business community on changes that may have occurred, will have, or will be occurring, or any best practices for those starting out. Our Export Concierge program, this was built out of the Global Cities Initiative. It is a customized business consultation service, connecting companies with the resources and service providers necessary for them to achieve their international trade goals. So we'll sit down with a client, we'll talk through, where they're at in the export process, where they want to be in the export process, and figure out how we can best get them there. Market research. So our market research services focus mainly on customized prospecting and benchmarking lists and product-specific import and export regulation guides. These are supplements to the more extensive market research that our counterparts offer, as you've heard from earlier presentations and we'll hear in the later presentation. But these are definitely helpful in supplementing those and identifying potential business partners, suppliers, and helping narrow down target markets. Our SCERT program, so we process certificates of origin on behalf of the KC Chamber, utilizing this online SCERT platform. And I will say, because the process is entirely contactless, it's all done online, it has been exceedingly helpful during the pandemic. We've been able to continue to offer this service without disruption throughout our COVID pandemic quarantine times. So we were very proud of that fact that we were able to keep that moving. It's a very quick turnaround process, and we offer a pay-as-you-go policy. So if you're interested in that, please let me know. Happy to help with that. Probably my favorite that we do is the Global Business Liaison. So this is where we leverage those 300 plus World Trade Centers around the world. And we do it in a variety of ways. This is trade leads, B2B meetings, conference and event packages. Anybody who is in the consumer electronics, WTC Las Vegas has offered a special behind the scenes package to any of our members, clients who are attending that virtual conference. They said, here's this package, we've got it. Feel free to offer it to any of your members free of charge. So we get those from time to time, meeting facility access. So when we get to travel again, not if, when we get to travel again, if you are traveling in a foreign area and you're like, oh my gosh, I need some office space, we can, if we've got a WTC in that market or in that metro area, we can call on them and see if they've got office space available for you to rent for the day. Business vetting is another thing that we do. We've actually had to utilize this a couple of times. As everyone knows, you receive trade leads from emails and you don't know if it's a legitimate trade lead or not. We've had to call on our WTC counterparts like, hey, do you know this company? Please let me know. Real estate assistance. So if you're looking for an office in a foreign market to expand your sales, we can help with that too. Requests for proposals. We've had counterparts come through and say, hey, if you've got a company who operates in this industry sector, we're actually bidding out for it. Please let your clients know and we'll support them if they decide to go through with that bidding process. So this is by far my favorite because it can be utilized in any manner of way. I'd like to tell our clients, sky's the limit. You know, there's no wrong question with these. The worst that they can tell us is, no, I'm sorry, you know, we don't offer that service. And 9 times out of 10, if they don't offer it, they can tell us who does offer that service, or they can connect us with somebody who will. Next is virtual trade missions. So this is new to us this year. We are offering these in conjunction with some of our strategic partners, and we hope this will lead to more in the future and eventually in-person trade missions. Again, when, not if, we get to travel again. But the format of markets will vary from trade mission to trade mission, but companies should expect quality B2B meetings out of these and in-depth market and industry overviews. And these last three, I'm not going to go super in-depth on just for the sake of time, but I did want to let everybody know World Trade Center Kansas City serves as the Ex-Im Bank Regional Export Promotion Program Partner, it's a mouthful, World Bank Private Sector Liaison Officer, PSLO, and the USTA, or U.S. Trade and Development Agency, Making Global Local Partner. That's a lot of alphabet soup, but what it boils down to is we serve as a conduit to promote the services and resources of those organizations. We also act as a connector should a company need direct access to these organizations. So we serve that for the Kansas City area, but know that we can go a little farther out. Again, our primary territory covers quite a bit. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. So to wrap, please know that my virtual door is always open, as are, I know, my other presenters. This is my contact information, and you can also reach out to the Kansas Department of Commerce's international team for it as well. With that, I will turn it back over to you, Lou. And thanks, everyone.
Melissa, thank you for the wealth of information. Just as a reminder, all the participants, if you have questions, please submit it in the chat box. All right, last but not least, we have Ms. Lori Piper and Mr. John Adesi from the Kansas Small Business Development Center. The acronym is KSBDC. The KSBDC has 12 offices throughout our state. Lori is based in Topeka and John is based in Overland Park. Lori, the floor is yours.
Thank you. We have a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you, Lou. We appreciate the invitation to present today and tell everyone about our services, and also be present with other partner organizations that we work with to help businesses export more successfully. Next slide. The Kansas SBDC is a nationally accredited small business development center. We are a part of a national network called America's SBDC. We receive some of our funding through the U.S. Small Business Administration, also through the Kansas Department of Commerce, regional and local economic development organizations, and our university host institutions. In 2019, the Kansas SBDC generated $94.6 million in capital infusion in the state of Kansas, working with the small businesses that are our clients. And for every $1 invested in us through our funding partners, we had a $45 return on investment. Next slide. I'm going to be presenting today with John Adesi, who's one of my colleagues. I'm Lori Piper. I'm with the Washburn University SBDC and Bright Center located in Topeka. John is with the Johnson County SBDC located in Overland Park. We have another colleague who also is very actively engaged in export advising. Her name is Stephanie Willis, and she's also with the Johnson County Community College SBDC. Next slide. One of the things that we do in working with small businesses generally is think about opportunities for growth potential. And so some of the businesses that we work with aren't exporting already or might be new to export. And one of the things that we do is try to help them evaluate whether exporting might be a good part of their growth strategy. Approximately 1% of the small businesses in Kansas are currently exporters, and that generates about $10.2 billion in, 25% of Kansas's $10.2 billion in export. So when we talk about reasons for exporting, we talk about things like how it might help a business hone its competitive edge, how it might help expand the lifespan of the products. And we also help them evaluate whether or not perhaps their best market might be outside of the US. Next slide.
And I think that's to me. So thanks, Lori, and thanks to Lou and Kansas Commerce for having us here. I'm John Adesi, again, Lori and Stephanie's colleague in Johnson County. And these are sort of our core services. And so we do offer a number of readiness assessments. We're kind of experimenting right now with one from the Harvard Business Review that's on our website, and looking at the 7 attitudes of management toward exporting and toward international trade. Lori will talk a little bit more about the process of an international business plan, but really just in terms of mitigating risk, and that's always a good thing. And then the next 2 things are really where I live, I think, the international market research, and I know Melissa talked about that, and I'll show you some examples, but really trying to find the optimum potential markets for your goods and services. And I said services. You know, we actually have a trade surplus, and that is in services. We export more services than we bring in. Some people don't think about that, but we're doing very well there. And then we're all financial wonks, cash flow geeks, whatever you want to call it. And so we're doing financial projections very frequently. If you want to expand, the SBA has an Export Express loan program, 90% guarantee, which makes you look very appealing to a bank. Export working capital loan, say you get a big honking order, $2 million crane or something. I don't know what a crane goes for, but $2 million order, and it's going overseas. Well, that's a working capital cash flow crunch, and you're going to need to buy more materials, possibly new equipment. You're going to need to bring in more people, maybe a different shift, and train them. And you're going to have to build this thing. You have to bring it to the port and get it overseas and get it delivered and get it assembled and do the paperwork to get billed and wait to be paid. That's a cash flow crunch. So yes, a $2 million order, awesome. We're popping champagne corks, but it might be a $1.5 million cash flow need that you need. So we're doing that frequently. And then, as you saw today, just some fantastic resources. If we do the international trade research, and it looks like Dubai is the place to go, we don't know anybody there, but the Kansas Department of Commerce certainly does, and their STEP program can help pay for that. And the U.S. Commercial Service has people on the ground there, and Kansas Commerce's STEP program can pay for that. We do work very closely with the SBA. Obviously, we're kind of under them in terms of regulation. Ex-Im Bank to make sure you get paid. And you met the Kansas Global Trade Services and World Trade Centers, and fantastic support there. And then we know other folks as well. If you need an attorney to draft an international contract, or a banker to handle a letter of credit, we know some folks. So back to you, Lori.
Next slide, please. So one of the tools that we use is a readiness assessment tool. It includes a 23-point test and provides immediate feedback in the form of an export readiness test score. This is just one of the tools that we use. Next slide. We also assist businesses in putting together an international business plan. This is something that we encourage people to think of as a process. It's a planning process, a process of making decisions about how export fits into the big picture for the business, which product or products, service or services are going to be exported, whether they need to be adapted for the new market, what the market objectives are, what the benchmarks are for success, how they're going to perhaps need to adjust their business model in order to engage foreign markets, what their distribution plan is going to be like, what they need to do in terms of risk mitigation, and also importantly, how we can work with available resources to help them be successful exporters. Next slide, and John, I think this is you.
Yeah, Lori's such a pro. She did my slide on the readiness assessment. She's good. I just kind of gave up on that. So again, I mentioned the international market research, and these are just a handful of the tools that we use. I really like the ITC trade map, which can give us an idea of who out there in the world is buying stuff. And I'm not talking about little things. I mean, the units are in tons on this thing. And if you look at the very lower left where it has a kind of a heat map with some blue and gold circles, that's talking about how far afield the customers are willing to buy. So if they're in France, do they only buy within the EU, or are they willing to entertain a supplier from North America, for example? In the middle, the World Trade Bank, oh my gosh, they've got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of data sets. I was always using the featured indicators, and there were hundreds. And then one time I noticed it said all indicators, and I looked in there and there were thousands. But again, for the crane example, there's data in there for prevalence of railway lines, prevalence of cell phone reach, and if you have an e-commerce solution or an app or something, literacy. I've used it for healthcare concerns for clients that had products for diabetes, for example, and prevalence is in there. Then on the one on the right, not the best slide shot, sorry, but it's the MSU Global Edge out of Michigan State University. And if you can only choose one source, oh my gosh, use that one. They've got a kind of a quick and dirty, one of many things, a quick and dirty country comparator tool where you go in and you can choose from a subset of indicators, not the thousands they have in the World Bank, but a little subset. Choose up to 5 and bam, it will give you a list of the top markets in the world. It's not, that particular tool is industry agnostic, so it's not looking at drill bits, it's just looking at overall potential, but still a really quick way to get into things. And again, these are just a couple of the databases that we use. And if we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. This is where we put them together. I don't do pretty spreadsheets. This is an ugly spreadsheet, but it's useful. So we take all the data from those 10 or 12 sources, we roll it into an Excel spreadsheet or a scorecard. We weight it appropriately for the client. And then you see in this particular case, this was a food product that I looked at some time ago. Qatar, the UAE, rose to the top of the charts. Of course, they got money; they need to import everything. So, so they're potentially a fabulous customer. And again, I don't know anybody there, but the U.S. Commercial Service does, and the World Trade Center does. So, next slide, please, if you would. And then, of course, then you got to do the money, and so we run the numbers frequently for financial projections for the working capital loans, Export Express, and by the way, you might be an exporter if you're only shipping stuff across the street to someone else that incorporates your stuff. We had success with a powder, what do you call it? Powder coater. There we go. That wasn't sending anything out of the country, but they were powder coating stuff and sending it to as an OEM to another supplier in Kansas. That supplier was selling stuff abroad, so they were an indirect exporter. And as an indirect exporter, you can tap these same financial vehicles and get these 90% guarantees and access to some capital. So, and one more slide for me, I believe. And then we're very happy to partner with NASBITE, that's our trade association, and offering their trade passport program. This is so far 60 really good, really great training modules on a number of subjects. As you can see, they're only like 30 minutes long, so they're nice little bite-sized kind of things, but these are by subject matter experts. You can do 20 of these things for free. If you like what you see and you want to do the rest, it's like $150, which was a screaming deal. At Johnson County Community College, Stephanie and I are going to be doing some like lunch and learns or watch parties using excerpts of these and then having some discussion. So I think we're starting off with political and economic risk, because we see some things out there like the weakening dollar making things less expensive for our goods overseas. So your goods will appear to be less expensive and you can sell more of them. So I'll turn it back to Lori for the Bright Center.
Next slide. Within the SBDC and our university host institutions, we have a number of specialized centers. The newest one is our Washburn University Bright Center, which stands for Business Resources for Innovation, Technology, and Exporting. What we're doing is developing programming to help high potential small businesses with pathways to commercialization, which of course includes exporting. We have a website that is going to go live within the next couple of weeks. It's the wubrightcenter.com. And you can go on that to receive notification of when it becomes active. Next slide, please. What we do through the Bright Center is team advising using our internal team through the SBDC and the Bright Center, but also advising bringing in resource partners from around the state and around the region to help businesses have access to the advice and resources that they need. We have a series of educational events planned for the year. We're working on developing new and innovative programs to help small businesses with pathways to commercialization. Some of this includes developing management capacity, which is something that's very important for international trade, and helping them develop to the point where they're ready either for financing or for bringing in investors. We are also very actively working with partners and seeking partners to engage with for outreach and programs development. Next slide, please. Here are some of the upcoming events that we have that are export related. We're going to be having a roundtable with other resources on talking about how to engage with businesses that have potential for export. We have a couple of export training sessions coming up for businesses, how to put together a business model and understand your value proposition for businesses new to international trade, how to fund your export venture and what market research will you need, and protecting your intellectual property domestically and internationally. And we also are an EXIM Bank rep partner. So we're going to be involving EXIM Bank in the international trade financing, as well as our SBA partner. Next slide, please. John, I'm sure would like to join me in thanking our Kansas businesses for being so great to work with, and also the international resource partners that are so valuable in helping us deliver good guidance to the businesses that we work with. John? You're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm there. Thank you, Lori, and thank you all for joining us today. And I think Lou's going to do some Q&A. And you can ask the questions of these amazing partners.
Thank you, Laura and John, for the great information. Now that concludes our presentation part. We have heard from 4 export service providers and learned about their amazing programs. Once again, the Kansas Department of Commerce work with these entities hand in hand, and our programs complement each other in many different ways. Just remember, we may have financial assistance available to help you pay for the services you just heard. The most popular financial assistance program we have, I'll just name 3. First one is called STEP, State Trade Expansion Program. The second one is called KITSAP, Kansas International Trade Show Assistance Program. Third one is called KITMAP, Kansas International Trade Marketing Assistance Program. The trade show program is mostly used to pay for trade shows. STEP includes many different activities, including training, trade shows and missions, and market interest support. Some of the work commercial service does, market study type of work. And the last one, kit map, that one's a little bit more flexible. It covers a lot more. For example, fees for letter of credit processing fee, we can help to pay for those. Most importantly, I want to point out the KISS-app and KitMap program can be used to support virtual trade shows and virtual business promotion activities. So that is something new we're doing in light of COVID. Keep us in mind if you want to do a virtual activity. Now let's dive into the Q&A session. I don't really see any questions right now in the chat box. If you have any, please submit. But I did prepare a couple of questions for our speakers. I know we're a little bit tight on time, so I will ask each of the presenters we just heard from, please name the top service you would urge a company to use from your organization. And if you have any, if you witness any success or best practices companies used during the pandemic, please share it with us. And we'll just go in the order of the presentation. The first one up will be AJ and Pinky. Please share your insight.
Okay, I'll jump in. As far as services during this time that I would recommend most, first one would probably be international market check. We can go ahead and reach out to a market that you're interested in, and they will go ahead and reach out to contacts in the market and present information on your company and gauge interest and come back to you with that level of interest. It's kind of quick. You get some fast, quick feedback. The second one, if you're ready to go ahead and actually establish new reps or distributors, would be our international partner search with virtual introduction. They would go ahead and search for potential partners for you to be your rep or distributor. And we would do something kind of like what we're doing right now today. They would go ahead and take those top candidates and they would arrange a date and time to go ahead and do a virtual video introduction to you for them. Aside from that, my other piece of advice would be everyone on here today has services and capabilities. No one organization has everything for everyone. Get to know all of these service providers. We all know each other, and we can tell you whether we can help you or whether you should be talking to someone else. Like I said, we all know each other, so everyone, please get to know all of them.
Thank you, AJ. And Karen?
Agree completely with AJ, and I can even anticipate with everything my colleagues are going to say. We all work together, if not on a daily basis, on a weekly basis. We all know each other well. So I'm going to take a different tack. Especially during this global pandemic, what we've seen is that companies who have certain characteristics are the ones who are experiencing success. And I'll summarize them from our experience as being what you might think of as an entrepreneur. So even if they're not working for a startup company, and they still have this entrepreneurial mindset, an ambition to hunt new opportunities and to try new things, which this may seem very simplified, but we have seen that the companies who are willing to think outside the box and take one step forward in this really challenging environment are the ones who are continuing to see success. And as we look backward, they're the ones that have always been successful. So I would encourage everyone, if you have an idea, if you have a question, there's no wrong answers necessarily. Just get out there and seek those new opportunities. Ask for help. You have lots of resources and help available to you.
Thank you, Karen. Melissa?
Yeah, no, I would definitely echo Karen's comments. What we've seen on our end is pretty much the same. Those that have done really well during this time have the willingness to pivot and to innovate in ways that we just haven't seen before. I think everybody's heard the Jay Rieger story where they're like, okay, we can't sell, our alcohol in bars anymore. The sales are dropping. We need to do something different. And they pivoted an entire line of their manufacturing to making hand sanitizer. It's that willingness to be able to pivot. And like Karen said, it's that entrepreneurial spirit that goes through. And then contingency plans. Anybody who's had a contingency plan has definitely weathered this really well. So always be thinking about that in the back of your mind. And then as far as like our top services that I would recommend, I'll go with one for the sake of time, is that global business liaison, where we can leverage those different World Trade Centers. There is so much that comes through and goes out, and it's a two-way. So, if you're looking for something in a particular market, whether it's a business meeting, conference, like things like that, all the way down to trade leads, you're just looking for a distributor in that market. We complement with others. So we would work with like U.S. Commercial Service to widen that net. But it is just an awesome resource that we have that complements a lot of these other services. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Melissa. Lori and John?
I'll let Lori begin.
Okay. In terms of the three things that people should come to us for, I would say market research, decision-making about putting together an international business plan, and also connection to resources. And in terms of the piece of advice that I would have, really utilize the resources before entering a new market, whether you need a resource to assist with market access, whether it's financing, whether it's export compliance or protecting your intellectual property. Connect with resources before you get out there into other markets. John?
And I'll reiterate that. I'm going to argue with one of my colleagues, and it's Karen. Karen, no one ever knows what I'm going to say. And so all of my colleagues know that. So you'll learn that soon enough. I'm going to reiterate what Lori said. Don't go it alone. This is the most fleshed out ecosystem you're ever going to find. If you come to us as a domestic business and you want to borrow money, great, we can help you. But there's so many pieces that can be brought into bear on this, and you've met them, and then look beyond that. Don't try to go without a good banker, or perhaps without someone in concert with Ex-Im Bank to guarantee your receivables. Don't try to ship without a freight forwarder. Don't write your own contracts, or understand what's in the contract. One wrong Incoterm and your profit could be gone. So there's so much expertise. Make use of it. Make use of the people you met today and the people that we know. Please don't go alone.
Thank you, John and Lori. And thank you everybody for your input. We heard lots of great advice and potential programs you can use. And just remember, most of those programs, we might be able to help you to pay for it. So reach out to us. To all of our presenters and participants, I hope you found today's session insightful and helpful. I know that with the global pandemic, all can seem bleak at times. Even if we can't achieve the $368 per second mark, we're here to help you to get prepared, to increase your export sales, and to expand your global footprint. And all of our partners share the same goal. We're all in this together. If you need anything, even if you don't think we have the answer, just give us a call. We will figure it out together, and we're only one call away. With that, thank you so much for your time today. Stay tuned for future event announcements. Thank you.
Thank you, Lou.
Thanks, everybody.